All right. So, hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. It has now been 2 months since Larry and Hilde have been, or have returned at least from Panama, and they're so excited to finally give you guys the whole story of what they were able to do, and also kind of let you know of maybe if this is something you're thinking about, how you may be able to finagle all of this. Again, I just want to repeat, if we can, please keep ourselves on mute. And if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat or wait for the end, and we will gladly get them there. So I'm going to turn it over to Hilde and Larry, and they can take it from there.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay, can you see it? Can you see the screen, Allison?
I muted myself. Yes, I can.
but you can see it. Okay, good.
Yes.
We're good to go then. So hello, everybody. We're going to be talking tonight about our volunteering in support of the El Valle Amphibian Conservation Center, short EVACC. EVACC is located in El Valle, Panama, and it is the location for the project Golden Frog, which is one of the 6 signature animal programs of the Maryland Zoo. This means that the zoo provides financial support as well as sending staff out there to help and support the cause. The zoo has been doing this for about 2 decades now, and there's been numerous talks and information about this. But you're probably all wondering, how did they even get there? How did this all started? And this was through one of those kind of events that the zoo put on. It was a virtual field talk in April last year, so exactly just about a year ago. It was from the field in Panama, where Dr. Allen was basically interviewing Heidi Ross, who is the director of El Valle Conservation Center. So this is one of the screenshots of the virtual field talk, and so they basically explained all the work that the zoo does in cooperation with them, or to support the Project Golden Frog, and of course it was very interesting. I watched it carefully, and soon it became clear that they do a lot of good work, but there's a lot of challenges. It's a very small group, a very understaffed group of people who are fortunately very passionate, but obviously you can only do that much with few people. The other thing that became clear was that there's always a funding issue. You can always use more money, and the limiting factors are often money. So even though our zoo gives financial support, and there's also grants that come in. Of course, towards the end, people had a chance to ask questions, and one of the things that came up several times was, how can we help? And of course, Heidi said, well, we can always use money, but a more important thing that everybody can do is raise awareness, spread the word about the plight of the golden frog. So we already been doing this in the Maryland Zoo. We have the golden frog exhibit in the chimp forest, as you all know, and that's one of the places where we do raise awareness. But how about doing it in Panama? That sounded like even more fun, a real cool idea. And so one of the questions I asked at the end of the presentation there, the field talk, was, would you accept volunteers coming to Panama and staffing the visitor center? And I think they were both taken a little bit by surprise, and there was a bit of hesitation before they answered, and Dr. Allen eventually said, well, maybe how about if you have a proposal, send us an email, send an email to the conservation committee. at the time, Larry wasn't home, and but when he came home, I was all excited, and I said, I think we found us a nice volunteer job if they would have us. We're definitely capable of doing it because we've both been trained in Panamanian golden frog as exhibit guides. We had kind of a couple of month experience running a visitor center in Alaska many years ago, but still that was a good experience. And we've both been trusted with handling money. We have experience with that too. So just to be perfectly clear, this was not a volunteer opportunity that the zoo was looking to fill, but we kind of created it, and we totally did it at our own expense. We did not want the zoo to incur more costs. I guess it wouldn't have even been approved in the first place.
Yeah.
But so we totally did it at our own expense. And of course, sending volunteers on such a field assignment, that was a proposal that had never been considered before, and it would definitely set a precedent. So Larry was enthusiastic about it as well, and
Yeah.
then he took over from there with the practical stuff.
Yeah, so the proposal was met with some initial concern, and it's because the zoo, over the 20 or so years that they've been involved with EVACC, have established a trust, and they don't want to do anything that was going to damage that trust. So they were a little bit leery about sending volunteers down there. They didn't know, how it would go. So as time passed, and with some persistence on our part, the idea seemed to gain some acceptance and eventually some enthusiasm. So the zoo didn't have a kind of a procedure to follow to vet us. So they asked us to submit a pre-proposal conservation action form. That's the standard form that anybody would use to propose a new conservation project. They ask us to provide a resume with our relevant volunteer experience. And from there, we had to obtain the Zoo Conservation Committee's approval, the approval of Dr. Ellen, Kevin Barrett, who's the curator of Herps, Allison Schwartz. What is she again? Oh, she's the director of volunteer programs, and of course, Kirby. So this all started in April of 2023, and we finally got approval in early December of 2023. So it was just about 9 months in the making. So once we got word that it was approved, we met with the conservation programs manager, Kate Mansouris, who had been to the EVACC earlier in the year. And she gave us some tips on how the visitor center worked. We went back and rewatched the same virtual field talk that Hilde had seen earlier. We researched some of the history. There's a bunch of videos available on YouTube. And we also reviewed the zoo's training materials for the Panamanian golden frog. And then we had to do the practical preparations. It was time to make reservations for our transportation and for our lodging. So we learned that there were some flight options. There's a direct flight from BWI to Panama City, but that gets in the evening. So that meant we would have to stay an extra night in Panama City because we wouldn't want to drive during the day, during the night, in the dark to get there in a strange place that we hadn't been to before. They also had connecting flights that got there earlier in the day, but then you run the risk of missing the connection and losing your luggage and all that kind of stuff. So we opted for the direct flight. There were transportation options. We decided to rent a car, but you could take a bus or get something like an Uber to take you. And there was a wide range of lodging options, anything from hostels to Airbnbs to hotels. We decided to go with the Airbnb because of the length of our stay. We were going to be there for 19 nights. So that was the most economical choice. We already had a passport. That wasn't a hurdle, and there is no visa required, so we were good there. And the other cool thing is that Panama uses U.S. currency. They have their own coins, but they don't have any notes. They just use American currency. So there's no conversion from their money to our money, and there's no foreign exchange fees when you use your credit card. So
Okay, so finally the day was there, January 20th, and we took off from BWI direction Panama City in the afternoon. As we said before, because of the direct flight, we had to spend an extra night in near the airport, and the next morning we picked up our rental car and took off driving down the Pan American Highway, which goes. I'll see if I can put the little arrow down here. Yeah. So this is. I don't know if you can see it, but hopefully you do. This is Panama City where we arrived, and then the Pan American Highway goes all along the Pacific coast down to here, and then we had to. That was already a bit adventurous, but okay, doable.
We crossed the Panama Canal.
Oh yes, we did. And then at this point here, we made a right turn towards the interior. And as you, oops, maybe here at this point, we made a right-hand turn towards the interior to El Valle de Anton. That's the full name of the place where EVACC is located. Okay, that last road that I talked about is could just as well be called the pothole road, because this is just was terrible, and that's one of the main reasons why we wanted to do it during the day, because it would have been very scary doing this at night. But okay, we managed to get her there without major problems. And the other thing that was very noticeable was when we first got to Panama City, it was so hot. The heat was oppressive, and we came from snow here, so it felt terrible. But as soon as we kind of drove on that pothole road, we went up in elevation, because El Valle is located in the crater of an extinct volcano. So it's a really cool and idyllic place, almost surrounded by a mountain, well, yeah, hills from the volcano. And because we went up in elevation, the temperature was also a whole lot more tolerable. So that was really nice. We arrived there just after lunchtime, and with the directions of Dr. Allen, we easily found the El Valle Amphibian Conservation Center. This is the building. We found it relatively easily, but for a lot of tourists, it's not that easy to find, because there's a lot of misdirections in guidebooks and all that, and it's kind of tucked away behind the old hotel. So this is what it looked like the whole time we spent volunteering there. But since we've been back, or actually shortly after we left there, it was transformed into this. So the building is of course the same, but all the windows were covered with some kind of foil or film. I don't know exactly what you would call it. That was part of or totally funded by our zoo, actually. This is part of making it nicer and more attractive, and it definitely does look a whole lot better than when we were there. Okay, let's see here. So when what you see here is what it is. It's small. It's when you come in, there's a small visitor center, yeah, where you make your payments or donations is what they call them. And then the next room behind that is a small exhibit area with tanks or terrariums where the amphibians are displayed. And this is where we work the whole time. There's also a tiny gift shop in the same place. And then another thing that we had to manage was a close by nature trail. It's where people come to hike. It's just a very short hike, but it exposes you to a little bit of Panama's biodiversity, and it was cool, and we were responsible for that as well.
Yeah, so revenue is generated from the visitors who come and see the frogs and walk the trail. So if nobody's there, then the money doesn't come in. So that's one of the main reasons that they needed volunteers there. We never were involved with any of the breeding or any of that stuff. We just worked in the visitor center, which gave them time to do what they needed to do. And they didn't have to worry that tourists were going to come to the door and turn around and walk away, because every person that walked away was revenue that they were going to miss. So when we got to the EVACC that evening that we drove to Panama, we met Heidi Ross, the EVACC manager, and Edgardo Griffith, who's her husband, and he's the president of the El Valle Amphibian Conservation Center Foundation. And if any of you were at the Soup Social, you may remember that when we came there virtually as a special guest, he joined in with us for a little bit, and you got to meet him. So he gave us about a 2-hour orientation at EVACC. We got to see the general operation of the visitor center and the various amphibians, and a little bit about how things worked.
So because we can't all go there in person, we're going to give you a little virtual tour to see all the excitement there. And there we go. Like we said, behind the visitor center itself is a little exhibit area, and it's filled up with tanks, just like you see here, little terrariums, very similar also to the one that we have in the chimp forest for the golden frogs. You immediately notice that there's signage, and that's the case for all the tanks. And this was also provided by our zoo, by the marketing department, developed in collaboration with them, obviously, but then executed by our zoo and financed by our zoo. Of course, the star of the show is the Panamanian golden frog. It's a cultural icon in Panama, just like or very similar to the bald eagle for the United States. And you see the frog all over town. It's well, not the live frog, obviously, but in the form of statues and murals and signs and
benches.
Yeah, on benches. It's the name of restaurants, it's the name of a brewery, it's the name of
big hotels.
Beers, big hotels. So the Panamanian golden frog is everywhere, but not alive.
You'd have to be under a rock to not see it.
Exactly. So, but if you want to see it live, you have to go in the visitor center there, because it's extinct in the wild. This is the way it's exhibited in a kind of a naturalistic habitat, just like at our zoo. And actually, you see on the leaves, they were just fed little fruit flies. This is the kind of food that they provide there for the golden frogs. They didn't have as many as we actually. I mean, not on exhibit at least. Just about 6, but anybody that saw them was all excited. Like we already mentioned, I think it wasn't just about the golden frogs, although they were the star of the show. There was also a little bit of an exhibit on the biodiversity of Panamanian amphibians. So I took a couple of pictures of the little guys that you could see there, and some were really little, and others were up to about maybe 4 inches long, or big. That was about the size of the variety. On the right, you see a close cousin of the Panamanian golden frog. That's the harlequin frog. On the left is poison dart frog, a kind of a black and green poison dart frog. And so these are all animals that you can find in Panama, and sometimes also in a little bit wider range in Central America, up until maybe northern South America, Colombia, Venezuela, that kind of stuff. These are very cool frogs. They're arboreal frogs. The one on the left, one of the bigger ones that they have there, the one on the left is a crowned tree frog, and the one on the right is the infamous marsupial frog. Some of you might remember them. these were several examples of, and they had a bunch of those strawberry poison frogs. They come in all kinds of colors, but they're all very small. So that was always fun for people to look for them. And these were the hardest ones to find. They were not only very small, what you see here is very much enlarged, but they were only maybe like between 1/2 and 3/4 of an inch long. And on top of all that, they were semi-transparent. So they blended in very well with their surroundings. And it was always a challenge for the people to find them. So this is where we came in very handy to help them with a search for frogs. Another really cool guy, or girl, they were masked tree frogs. So another type of tree frog. They were in the same exhibit together with the red-eyed tree frogs, the ones that are famous in Costa Rica as well. And because they are nocturnal, you very seldom saw them like this. They were often kind of hanging. Let's see here. Yeah, hanging on a leaf. This is actually the Costa Rican one, the red-eyed tree frog. So hanging, blending in with a leaf, or sometimes when you were lucky and they would have climbed up on the side of the glass, you could see their ventral side, and that was always a hit with the people, seeing how they had all their legs and toes and the whole thing tucked in and just were a little blob on the glass. So very, very cool.
So then we also had this gift shop that we were responsible for. We had to collect the money, any of the things that were purchased, and then we had to keep the inventory, keep it restocking it. There'd be a bunch of people come in, buy a whole bunch of little things, and then we'd have to refill it and so forth. And then this part here, this is not this is visible to the public, but not open to the public. This is the breeding facility that's behind the visitor center. They're shipping containers that have been converted into breeding for the golden frog, also breeding some of the other frogs you saw, and they also breed the food for the frogs. They breed crickets and they breed fruit flies. They can't depend on the supply chain, because if that chain is broken, then they're going to lose all their frogs. So they breed all the food themselves. So we're all ready for day one. And it's now Monday morning, our first day. We get there a little before 9 and all ready to get started. And overnight, there was a power failure. And all of the timers that control the pumps, the lights, the misters, all those things, none of them were working because the timers were all off. So we come in and fortunately, Heidi was around, so we got her, and we spent the first hour with Hilde and Heidi crawling around on the floor, opening these big doors and trying to reset all the timers so everything got back to working. But that was the worst part, and from there, everything went relatively smoothly. One of the things that you have to do when you're there is be able to work independently. Heidi and Edgardo were gone. We were there basically by ourselves, but we had set up a WhatsApp group chat. So we were always able to get in touch with them if we had some kind of a situation or some question came up and then we weren't able to answer it. We could get in touch with them and they would advise us how to go from there. We always wore our zoo uniforms, our zoo volunteer uniforms, or something that said the Maryland Zoo, and that really helped with conversations and connections. There were a lot of people that came in from the United States and some neighboring states, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Virginia, and they would see our Maryland Zoo and they were like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" So we would be able to tell them that we were representing the primary conservation partner of the Maryland Zoo, and we had come down to volunteer, and that always started some good conversations. And we we promoted the Maryland Zoo almost to every visitor as being the primary partner. Okay. Yeah. So our daily tasks consisted of opening and closing the visitor center. Like we said, opening at 9 and closing at 4. We would greet the visitors when they came in, collect the fees. We had to ask them, did they want to see the frogs or did they want to visit the trail or both? And then we collected their fee, which was actually a donation. And we had two ways of collecting it. We could either accept the cash, or they also had a kind of a Venmo equivalent. You see that little sign on the bottom right there that says Yappy. That's their version of Venmo. So they just use their phone to pay and come in. And then we had to manually keep track of all of the visitors, how many people were going to the trail, how many people were going to the frogs, and it was done with little stick figures, you know, so very, very modern, very state of the art, but it worked. So then we would have the guests, we would ask them to sign the visitor log. That was important because it asked their name, it asked their email address, and it asked what country they came from. And you heard Hilde mention earlier about all the people that came in from all over the place. That was one of the ways that we knew. And this information was going into a database that they were building a email list that they could contact people, and also collecting that information about the countries where people came from was useful when they were filing for a grant. So yeah. So once the people said that they wanted to see the frogs, I would collect their fee, and then I would turn them over to Hilde.
From our initial training, Edgardo immediately said, well, you're not going to have time to talk to everybody individually, but the exhibits are self-explanatory. The people can have to look and find the frogs. There's signage in 2 languages, so they'll be okay. Well, we thought, we're here, we have the time, we're going to take a little bit of a different approach. We thought that an individual approach would be much more efficient and much more engaging and way more effective. So that was our personal preference. And of course, we spent a lot of time talking to guests. Everybody that, well, if they wanted to spend the time, everybody got away with the whole message. We showed them a bit of the biodiversity of wildlife in Panama, or amphibian life in Panama at least. And we told the story of the golden frog. It was amazing how few people actually knew the whole story. Everybody had, well, you can't miss the golden frog because it's so all over the place, but very few people actually knew what the deal was. And so everybody got the same message, saying that the frogs are endemic there, that Panama is the only place in the world where golden frogs were found, at least. And in specifically El Valle there, this is a very small area with cloud forests where the frogs actually lived. So it not only was it special to come visit EVACC in Panama and see the golden frogs there, but seeing them there where they actually the only place where they used to live in the wild was very unique, I would say, and people really appreciated that once they learned about that. The other thing was that the frogs were actually not couldn't be found in the wild anymore, that they had gone basically extinct in the wild. And again, not many people knew what the cause of that was. So we explained all about the chytrid fungus, which is something that we also do at our zoo, obviously. Then we also try to emphasize the role of EVACC and the Maryland Zoo boat in saving this species from going completely extinct. It's extinct in the wild, but because they intervened quickly when they saw things coming and captured most of the survivors there, they were able to at least keep a captive population going. And that way, with some research and maybe finding ways to, well, we probably won't be able to get rid of the disease, but we might find ways to find species or individuals that are more resistant to it. And so the goal is to eventually return them back to the wild. So everybody heard the story, and a lot of people were willing to help. And we, just like Heidi Ross told us, how can we help? Well, just spread the word. And that's what people did. When we talked to them in person, they went on and talked to other people in their hotel or in restaurants or in their neighborhood. And we actually found several people who came back the next day and said, we heard from blah, blah, blah. And they came and visit. So we saw in different types of people, different, some came as individuals in just as by themselves or as a couple. Some, it was a school vacation in Panama, so the schools weren't in session, but they had summer camps for kids. So we had big groups of kids coming in once in a while, and they also got the same story and were fascinated by the frogs. Sometimes there were local guides who brought in groups, individual groups of tourists to Panama, and so we basically got people from all over the place. A lot of locals, a lot of Panamanians, but not necessarily from that area. A lot of people from the States, from all over the United States, from Canada, other Central and South American countries, and then quite a few from Europe and even Asia as well. So
busload from Denmark.
a whole busload from Denmark, yeah. So when by the end of our short stay there, we had talked to or engaged with people from 29 different countries worldwide. And that was pretty exciting for us too, I thought. So the individual approach definitely worked. And we tried to accommodate most people in their own language or a language they were familiar with, but that wasn't always possible. But we always managed to, with the combined with the signs that were there, and just kind of point things out to get the message across, and that was always very much appreciated. And so yeah, I think all in all we were pretty successful in reaching making an impact and reaching our goal of raising awareness. These are a few examples of when such a big group of kids came about. So, and as we already mentioned, the visitor center and the exhibit area is very small. So we had to use our imagination on how to make it work, split up the groups, get them busy and occupied with one thing while the others did something else. So, but we always managed to give most people a great experience. See, it gets pretty cramped in there.
Not the group of adults that were there, and I think they were multiple groups of families and stuff. So it was like a whole room full of people, many speaking different languages at the same time.
Yeah, it was a little chaotic, but exciting at the same time.
But we weren't busy like that all the time. Sometimes we had downtime, and we had other things that we could do to help when that happened. I mentioned to you about the visitor log that had all that information, and all of that had to be put into the computer. And there were pages and pages of backlog from months and months of those visitor log sheets. So I would enter that data in between visitors. And then we had some responsibilities in the gift shop area with inventory. Here's a place where we decided that it would be useful if we got people to leave a review on Google for EVACC. The more people that would read a positive review, the more people would be likely to come. So we made up a sign in both English and Spanish and hung it on the window right as they would leave, and we'd point it out to them and ask them to please leave a review. Also, at the end of the day, we had a financial responsibility. We had to count the little stick figures to see how many people visited the frogs and how many people visited the trees, and then or the trail actually was the trees, and then make sure that the money added up correctly. We'd also have the money from the gift shop, and then we would do a WhatsApp kind of financial report for the day, telling them how much money we made that day, and then we put some back into the cash box to start the next day. And as I said, if you look there on the right, that's a $5 bill. Everything was in US dollars, and it couldn't have been easier as far as making change and so forth. So that was really great. The other responsibility we had was when the people wanted to do the trail, we had to go over and unlock the gate. It had a gate with a combination lock on it. So someone had to go over and unlock the gate, let the people in, and then lock the gate behind them, and then they could let themselves out at the other end of the trail. So then we got this surprise. That whole first week, we were working, the two of us, going back and forth with all the things we had to do. And then that weekend, we were told that on Monday, these two Panama University students who are majoring in tourism would be coming to start a 1-month internship. And by default, since we were the only ones there, guess who had to train and mentor them? Well, we did. And we didn't, well, I don't speak any Spanish, and Hilde spoke a little bit, and they didn't speak any English. Google Translate sure came in handy. And we basically showed them the everything, and with the help of the biologist who was there, who helped with the feeding of the frogs, we were able to teach them, or they learned from by shadowing us a few times about the frogs. And the goal was in a day or two to get them to take over the Spanish speaking frog tours. Of course, then during that downtime, we got them to help out with the gift shop inventory, and I got them working on the database using the visitor log sheets. And they were just jumping in and helping wherever they could. If there was a flood on the floor, before we could even ask them, they were there with a mop to help clean it up. And by like the third day, they were eager to do the frog tours in Spanish. And anytime a Spanish speaking person came in, they were right there, eager to give them the tour, and they did a great job. The other thing was that we learned that they were majoring in tourism, but they themselves had never been tourists. So they didn't really know what to expect. So after hours, a couple of times, we took them to a restaurant, we took them to a place to get a drink, and then took some pictures with them, like on a bench with one of the iconic golden frogs, and told them that these are the things that tourists like to do. So we sort of gave them a well-rounded idea of not only EVACC, but tourism in El Valle.
And initially, we had thought about working there for 2 weeks out of our 3-week stay, and then take a few days off at the end to explore Panama or another part of Panama ourselves. But we felt so bad, and we realized how much they needed help there, so we only took 1 day off of the whole time. But the good thing is that Panama is so rich in wildlife that you don't have to go very far to see the nice biodiversity. In fact, some of it came right to us. Like what you see here, that picture on the right of the two-toed sloth. He was hanging out behind the visitor center for a few days. Then he disappeared for a while, came back, so we got to enjoy his antics. Actually, we didn't initially see it, but Heidi came running from the back and said, "You got to see this. We have a slot." So not only was it fun for us, but we also told other people, other visitors, and for many, even Panamanians, it was their first slot they saw. So that was very cool. Then the bird life is also very diverse and colorful, and this was in addition to toucans that we saw but didn't get a good picture of. We had this. Um, I wouldn't call it a resident, but a moth, like you see the turquoise moth, who often made an appearance around the trailers there. Then there was also some less than charismatic wildlife. I mean, we thought it was very cool, but for some people it might be a bit of a deterrent. Not only were they insects, critters, but they were big insects,
Giant insects.
Giant insects, yeah, like the grasshopper that you see on the left. I don't think that's magnified at all. It's actually probably a little smaller than it was for real.
Yeah.
It's the biggest grasshopper in the world, and it's the official name is giant red-winged grasshopper. So when it flies away and opens its wings, it's a flash of red.
And sounds like a motorboat. Like
So pretty startling when you see it for the first time, but totally harmless. And then the other visitor we had inside our Airbnb was this kind of praying mantis, which you see on the right-hand side. One morning we found him on the curtain, and he was also pretty big, like about 3 inches long, I think, and with that cobra type head. He was kind of scary, but again, totally harmless. This is a hooded mantis, nothing rare or anything, but yeah, it was a unique find for us, that's for sure. Just like in like a lot of places, the amphibian population has come down quite a bit in Panama, and not everybody, not all amphibians though, went the same way as the golden frog. Some were less sensitive to the chytrid fungus and are still around. So every evening, if you would stay until after dark, you could hear the chorus of the cane toads, which are invasive in a lot of places in the world, but native in Panama. So that's the ones you see on the left. And everywhere you go, inside, outside, you not only see the geckos, but you hear them as well.
But none of them tried to sell us car insurance.
Okay. And then, unfortunately, our time there came to an end. We all were very sad about it. We, as well as Heidi and Edgardo. So this is our goodbye picture. And we really enjoyed the work that we did there, and just by staffing the visitor center, which is basically all the time we spent there, we gave them a very needed break, because they have quite a busy life with not a lot of opportunities to take time off. Heidi actually joked at the end, I think it was a joke, that she was trying to hack into our account to cancel our flights. So that was kind of like, we took it as a compliment.
Yeah, we felt like she didn't want us to leave. Okay, so maybe you're starting to wonder, like, what would the requirements for this volunteer job be? Well, first of all, we thought it might be good for people to have some foreign travel, particularly to a developing country where, you know, their infrastructure might not be as up to par as in the United States, where, you know, there could be power failures or problems with the water or whatever. So, you know, you don't necessarily want to be in a country like that and experience all these things for the first time. So having some of that experience might be helpful. Edgardo said that he felt that it was a 2-week minimum. He didn't feel like it would be worthwhile to have people come for less than 2 weeks, because by the time they really got up to speed, they'd be leaving. As we mentioned also, that you have to be able to work independently. They turn it over to you, and there you go. But like we said, we were always in touch by a WhatsApp group chat, and could get in touch with them if we needed to. And of course, we feel that it's a two-person job, because if you had to collect the money, have them sign the book, um, uh, show them the frogs, open the gate, and do all that stuff with multiple people coming and going, it would be just chaos. I don't think you could handle it. But with the two of us working as a team, it worked well. And then once we got the students there, that even worked better. You have to be trustworthy because you're handling money, you're handling merchandise, and you also have that responsibility of making sure that all the pumps and filters and lights and all that stuff are working. And you don't want to have them come in one day and you say, well, all the frogs died. Uh, so you have to be punctual. You have to be there to open at 9 o'clock. And also that means you have to be there even earlier than 9 o'clock, because you don't know when you open the door if there's going to be water all over the floor, and then you have to mop it up before the visitors start coming. A basic knowledge of amphibians is good. I would think most of us have that from being at the zoo, but that definitely helps. Spanish is useful, but not required. I don't speak Spanish, and I got along okay. Hilde speaks a little bit. She got along okay. And Google Translate was a very important tool. You have to be engaging. All of us who work at volunteer at the zoo on grounds, we're engaging visitors all the time. So we all have that ability. And then flexibility is very important, because things can change on a dime. You doing one thing, and then all of a sudden you get a call and you have to shift gears and go in another direction. So being able to be flexible and not getting too rattled about it is also important.
So in conclusion, we would say we felt very, very, very appreciated. We loved doing what we did. It was not too demanding of a job, but yet challenging enough that we never lost interest. There was always something to do. We also felt like we made a big impact, actually, just by having these logs. We know that we interacted with 543 people who walked the trail, with 619 people who actually visited the exhibit and learned something about the frogs, which helped with the raising of the awareness. The Google reviews, which we promoted, doubled in the time that we were there. What else? Oh yeah, we each logged 140 volunteer hours working there in the visitor center, and we know that because before we left, Alison had made it possible to set up this volunteer job in Volgistics. So we logged in and out every day, just like we do in the zoo. We felt like we were good ambassadors for the zoo as well. Not only did we highlight the great work that Edgardo and Heidi had started there to help the golden frog, but also made sure that people were aware that other institutions in the world, in particular our zoo, helped out and contributed very much. We were, whatever you want to call it, guinea pigs or trailblazers, and demonstrated that zoo volunteers can do the job, and that we hope by doing this and then talking about it, we opened the door to more volunteers going over there and helping out. It turns out that the need for volunteers there is the highest in our winter, like from November into early April. That's when, it's the holidays. It's also the summer vacation for Panamanian school kids. So this is the time they need us, or they need volunteers the most. What else? Let's see here. Oh yeah, it is not really for the faint of heart. I mean, it's not as uncomfortable as some other countries in the world, I would say, but there's a few things that might not work to your advantage if you're not very flexible. So you have to deal with frequent power failures, and they're ongoing. The water pressure is sometimes more of a trickle than a real running faucet.
And it might be a cold shower
And
in the
it might be a
morning. Yeah.
cold shower in the morning. Yeah, right. But again, we definitely survived that. Then, as we showed, there's those insects. We love those, but for some people that might be a bit of a deterrent, obviously. And then, as we talked about, it can get quite hot, even though it's way more comfortable in El Valle itself. It's still, yeah, quite a contrast with the winter where we came from. So,
But the inside of the visitor center is air
oh, that's
conditioned.
right.
So we weren't out in the heat all day by being in the visitor center. It was nice and cool.
Mhm. But despite all these so-called negatives, we loved doing this job, and we are ready to go back.
Absolutely. I'm even taking a beginner Spanish course to have a little bit more ability to communicate when I go back. This was also a benefit to the zoo. We've been talking about what benefit it has been to EVACC, but by zoo volunteers going down there, it saves the zoo some money. It's not that the zoo won't ever send staff down there again, but we as volunteers can go down there and do the things that the staff we don't do the things the staff do, and the staff wouldn't do the things that we do necessarily. So by us going down there and manning the visitor center, the cost that we picked up was something the zoo didn't have to pay, and it was a form of a donation to the zoo in a way. So based on our experience, what we've done, the Zoo Conservation Committee is now going to develop a procedure for approving volunteers. They're going to make sure that they can vet people and maintain that trust that we talked about earlier, so that they're sure that the people they're sending down there are going to be the ones that are going to do the job they want done. So if any of you are thinking about that you would like to pursue this, certainly let Allison know. And if you want to talk about it some more with us, we'd be happy to talk to you about it. And when the procedure's in place, I'm sure they'll be ready to have you go through it. So I think with that, we're pretty much ready for some Q&A.
But also for the people who have no intention of volunteering.
Oh, yeah.
We hope that this presentation gave you a little bit of insight in the kind of things that the zoo that you're also a volunteer at is doing for these special programs, the signature animal programs. So in other countries than here, and give you more of an appreciation of the work that the zoo does.
Yeah, and just in case you're wondering, this picture here on this slide of all these people, every year on August the 14th, it's a National Golden Frog Day in Panama, and all the children dress up as golden frogs and they parade down the street, and it's a big deal. So
well, all the children in El Valle.
In El Valle, not in the whole country.
Panama,
just in
El Valle.
Yeah. But it's a special day. Okay, so now we're ready for some Q&A. This is a couple of craft beers from the El Valle Brewing Company. Every day when we got off of our shift ended and we went over to the Hotel Campestre, which is right next door, and we got a craft beer to start the day. And some of the brews, not all of them, but some of them, the money, some of the proceeds from the beer went back to EVACC. So we were supporting them yet in another way by drinking some beer. Okay, so we're gonna
enjoyable way.
We're gonna stop sharing the screen right now, and we're gonna come back in person. Yep. Stop share here. Let's see.
Yeah. So Larry and Hilde, I'm going to go through the questions that are currently in the chat, and then we can open up to anybody else who has. There you go.
Okay, there we go.
So the first question came from Michelle, which is, were any vaccines needed? Isn't there yellow fever in Panama?
Or anyway.
Vaccinations. No, nothing is required. and not needed either. There, when you go in the time period that we went, so over the winter, there's not even many mosquitoes. I don't think we saw one mosquito ever. And yellow fever might be an issue in certain parts of Panama, but not there. That would be only an issue in the Darien Forest, which is on the border with Colombia. And this is an area where you don't go by yourself, certainly not not as a volunteer job. So no vaccinations required, no special things like this.
And John asks, was language a problem to be able to discuss the frogs?
I would say no, from somebody who doesn't speak anything but English.
But you didn't discuss the frogs much.
I didn't discuss the frogs much, but I did talk to all the people who came in who spoke English. I got sometimes while Hilde was given the frog talk in one language, I would get the other people started on the frog tour by talking about the golden frogs in English.
If you have a little bit of basic knowledge of Spanish, first thing you do is look up all the terminology, the frog, froglet, tadpole, egg, blah, blah, blah. And then
Baño, dinero.
No, metamorphosis. I mean, you kind of put, it wasn't perfect for me from the first day either. You kind of have to find your way a little bit, how you build your story and then adapt it to your audience, obviously. But for the Spanish speaking people, I kind of developed a little something in my head. The very basics. We didn't deviate much. Didn't put in too many side stories there. But you kind of build a little story with the main points, and then I apologized ahead of time that my Spanish was far from perfect, that it wasn't great at all, and that lowers the standard already. It lowers the expectations. So the people who were totally who could speak nothing but Spanish were very happy to have this as opposed to nothing at all or just English. So and then most people actually did speak a little bit of English. So it was one of those two-way conversations where we put in the best, put our best foot forward, and when we got to a little obstacle, they helped us out by filling in the blanks.
And a lot of Europeans that came in, the Germans, the French, and all that, they spoke English too, enough to communicate a little bit. I mean, traveling to a foreign country like that, they had a little bit of English, so it worked.
It's better. I mean, it's nicer if you can communicate in a different language or in their own language, obviously. But I would say it shouldn't prevent you from going at all.
Right.
Great. Barbara asks, can you talk a little about your lodgings and transportation between quote unquote home and the visitor center, and how far away were you from each?
Our Airbnb was 5 kilometers away. It took us 10, 15 minutes at the most to drive from our Airbnb to the visitor center.
Picking up the students along the way.
Later on, when we had the students, we had to go right by where they were, so we would pick them up, drop them off in the evening. The Airbnb we had was kind of like an apartment. It was very plain. I mean, it wasn't plush by any means. Had minimal furniture, but we had a refrigerator and
option to cook. We didn't use it, but well, we could make our sandwiches. You could make coffee, that kind of stuff. Had a decent bathroom. Not always hot water guaranteed, but that was not their fault. That's just all over El Valle.
But it was in a very pretty setting. There was a lot of bougainvillea and birds, and there was like a balcony with a hammock, and we could sit out there, and it was very nice. But like the power failures that they had at the center, we also had them there. So
but for people who would not have private transportation, there's many options for accommodations in El Valle. Actually, there was another lady who volunteered a little bit there once in a while, and she stayed in an Airbnb much closer to EVACC, so she could walk there if she wanted to. There's also a bus service.
Much more expensive too. So there's trade-offs. You know?
There's also a bus service that goes through town. So if you if you stayed a little further, but along the bus route, you could get there as well. Of course, the bus doesn't go every 5 minutes. So you had to be a little bit more aware of your time, and if you chose that option. But there are many options, from cheap or very affordable to really luxurious and expensive as well. El Valle is has way more options than some of the other towns in Panama.
And there's a hotel right next door to EVACC. I mean, literally a few steps away, and it's like $149 a night. So if you're staying for 19 nights, that's probably not a place you want to stay at your own expense.
But I mean, that's a personal choice.
Personal
obviously.
choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, that was the last question in the chat. If anybody has any further questions, feel free to unmute and ask away. While they are thinking of their questions, what I'm going to ask is, so you saw quite a few tourists. What is the draw to El Valle? Like, up until I started working at the zoo, I never heard of it. I mean, I don't know many places in Panama to begin with, but I mean, what is the draw to go there?
Yeah, I think for Europeans, it's mentioned in a lot of their guidebooks.
Oh.
So it's one of those things where when you lay out, a lot of Europeans travel not in group, they travel individually. So they go by guidebooks and reviews and all that stuff online. And it is mentioned. El Valle, the center itself is, and the area itself, it's just it's, if you don't look for a beach, it is a nice place to be. It has a lot of accommodations, a lot of things that you can do without going too far away from it. And it's also along the way, if you want to travel, for instance, to the border with Costa Rica, where there's also a lot of tourist activities going on, like what was it called, Chimayo and Boca del Toros.
Yeah.
That's also very touristy places. So it's kind of like along the way. So a lot of people kind of combined it. And because it's so rich in biodiversity, it also attracted a lot of those herp enthusiasts, the kind of people that come there specifically to find frogs and amphibians and all that stuff. It just is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hiking possibilities in the neighborhood, a lot of waterfalls and nice views.
Not really mountain climbing, but a lot of climbs, elevation hikes and stuff like that. I was very amazed that in the 3 weeks we were there, we met people from 29 different countries, and it's like all these people from all over the world are coming to this little tiny El Valle, but they came, and hopefully they enjoyed it.
Like I said, if you're not looking for a beach vacation, because there's no beach, you have to go like for about an hour on that pothole road to get to a beach, and a lot of the beaches are private and that kind of stuff. So for beach vacations, it's not a good location. But if you're looking for just to experience Panama and its biodiversity and do some walking and that kind of stuff, it is a nice place to be.
Yeah. Anybody else got a question?
So this is Betty. Did you ever feel unsafe?
Never.
But we didn't know, like we said, we only spent one night in the city, in Panama City, and we basically went from the airport. We were picked up, went to our Airbnb. The next morning we did the reverse, picked up the car. So we didn't spend any time in the city. We did hear from some tourists who had spent time there before that sometimes you can accidentally get into wrong neighborhoods, just like in any big city. So you have to be a little bit more careful about that, obviously. But where we were, it's so peaceful.
It would be like if you somebody flew into Baltimore and then spent time in Hagerstown or somewhere out in Western Maryland or something like that. You know, it's like not a lot of crime, and people were very friendly. it was very, very nice.
Of course,
So,
yeah.
so
Well, we
you
were
said
not.
you didn't cook. Did y'all eat out in local restaurants at night for dinner? And so
Yeah.
how was the food?
Very good, and you could find a really inexpensive meals if you wanted to. Like one place we went, you got like a half a roast chicken with potatoes and vegetable, and it was $4. So but you could also spend $50 for a meal too if you wanted. So again,
Just like with the lodging, you have many options, a wide range of options, from very cheap but very good food to very fancy food, and even options for vegans, vegetarians. There's a good variety of things, and we ate out every night because it wasn't worth cooking ourselves.
and sometimes
we treated ourselves.
sometimes we would be in a restaurant. We'd go right after we got off of our shift, and we'd have our Maryland Zoo shirts on, and people in the restaurant would see Maryland, and they'd say, "Oh, you're from Maryland?" And yeah, and we start talking, and then the next day they would come visit us at the at EVACC.
We had permission from Allison to keep our shirts on after hours.
As long as we didn't go wild and crazy.
Yeah, we don't know about when you ask about is it safe, I don't know if there's maybe a little bit more crime later in the night. We weren't like
No.
Party goers or anything. We didn't go out late at night, but we definitely were out after dark, and we never encountered anything that was weird. They can on the weekends they can get pretty wild. The Panamanians, they party hard. And it can get loud in certain areas.
The day we left was the beginning of Carnival down there. It was like the Saturday before Ash Wednesday, and there were, as we were driving away, there were lots and lots of cars coming that direction. So we don't know what it was like because we were gone.
Not a question, but a thank you for doing shopping for me.
Oh, yeah.
A little gift shop. And all the fun things that I was able to buy and have a little piece of EVACC.
Yeah, that was so nice too, because I posted a Facebook post and said, we have this little gift shop and all that. And before long, we had like, I don't know, 5 or 6 zoo volunteers who purchased like, what was it, $150 worth of merchandise that we packed into our suitcase and brought back for everybody.
And we're willing to do that again next time.
Yeah.
If
So,
all the people make
You're going to need to bring an extra bag for it.
yeah. And what we were thinking about is that if anybody from our zoo does go down there, and we go down there, maybe somehow in the distant future we could overlap our shifts, and we could help get somebody started before we left. So we're willing to do that if
to be flexible with that too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Very nice.
Well, I'm an interloper. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
But I just think it sounds like a wonderful adventure. You are flexible, so it works for you. I'd probably have a nervous breakdown if all the electricity went off in the front. I'd be like, oh my God, call somebody.
And you're the person they would call.
Well,
Right.
that's why we wanted to give an honest account of our experience there. We loved it, and we thought it was very worthwhile. But you can't ignore the fact that not everything always works out perfectly. There are a couple of hurdles along the way, and we were very, I mean, I wouldn't say happy, but we could definitely deal with that. We've been in worse places than that, but we just wanted to make sure that you all knew about that too, that we didn't make it sound like it was paradise in every single way, and it was like living in a fancy hotel. No, it was not.
Gotcha. Well, you did a great job. It sounds
pack a
very
flashlight.
and worthwhile.
That was actually a tip that Kat Matsouris
yeah.
gave us. She said, pack a flashlight. We said, okay, we'll pack a flashlight. And she meant to look for amphibians and reptiles at night. to go herping at night because that's what they do there. That's what the young people do. Of course, we didn't have the energy to go herping at night, but but we had the flashlight and we needed it night one when we had like a 9-hour power failure. So we're sitting there like, good thing Kat told us about the flashlight. We can at least see something.
You were
So, yeah.
prepared.
Yeah,
Good
we
Boy
were prepared.
Scouts and Girl Scouts.
And there's more of those practical tips that we have. I mean, needless to go through it all now if you're not planning to go, but if somebody would be serious about it, we're definitely willing to share some of that information that would make it a little more comfortable, helpful. Yeah, just to make it work better.
Absolutely.
Hi, Rosie.
Oh, I see a beautiful doggy there,
Oh, yeah.
Kathleen's
Oh.
dog. Mhm. Welcome.
All right. Well, this was fantastic. I hope you were able to read Dana's remark in the chat before she headed out. But on behalf of all of us, I thank you for putting this presentation together. We've all been hearing bits and pieces, over the past couple of months about this. So to hear everything all together was very informative, and it just takes home the message that of what support you were able to give them and what kind of representation you were able to give us. And that is just incredible. So thank you guys so very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah.
Loved it.
All right, everybody, I'm going to stop recording, and I hope you all have a good evening.